Hello and welcome to this demo forum executive interview with Karthik Krishnan, who is CEO of Concentric AI. Welcome, Karthik.
Thank you, Richard, for having me. Glad to be here.
So glad to have you here talking about data security, and in particular, data security posture management. Tell me what that new term means to you.
Yeah, so it coincides somewhat with what the genesis, the reason we founded Concentric in the first place. The thing that we're seeing in the market is, I would say, a troika of things that are happening. One, a massive explosion in the amount of data that customers have to deal with. Data is also sprawled everywhere, both on premises as well as in the cloud. Even the most aggressive enterprises transitioning the cloud have a healthy amount of data on premises. And the nature of what is mission critical has also changed. It's become infinitely more complex, everything from financial data to PII, PCI, PHI data to intellectual property to business confidential data. And most customers on the data security spectrum of attempting to discover your data, monitor, and then protect are struggling in this sort of a complicated landscape to be able to get a good idea of where all their sensitive data is, and more importantly, identify where the risk is to this information and then protect it. And it's this sort of a complex landscape that has given rise to data security posture management as a new category with a new class of technologies and vendors attempting to solve this problem.
Absolutely. So give us just a brief overview of how Concentric approaches the problem.
Yeah, I think for us, in talking to a whole bunch of CISOs, even before we started the company, the thing that became consistently clear to us is you cannot do effective data security without a good understanding of where all of your sensitive data is. And so the data discovery element becomes foundational to what you do. Because if you don't know what you have, you can't really monitor it for risk, much less protect it. Data discovery is something that is foundational to effective data security. And today's approaches often rely on regexes and pattern matching to get a sense of where that is. And that has traditionally had two challenges. One, it often requires you to know what it is you're looking for. Most customers will tell you, I don't know what I'm looking for, which is why I need solutions to help me in the first place. Secondly, as organizations start to become larger, it often requires security teams to talk to business units and get these rules that they can set up in the first place. And then mostly these approaches are written with false positives and false negatives because words or regex patterns often just don't give you the context necessary to understand your data. And so consequently, most customers even today have a very limited visibility into their data. So what Concentric does is we have brought deep learning and natural language processing to this world where through our discovery engine, we develop a semantic understanding of data where we go beyond regexes and patterns to developing a semantic understanding of the content to give customers a thematic view into their data, everything from tax filings to intellectual property to trading data to PII, PCI juxtaposed on top without them having to do any rule writing policy expressions up front. And once we do that, we're also able to give customers an autonomous view into risk where there may be inappropriate sharing, permissioning, entitlements, issues where sensitive data may be in the wrong location, and giving them a risk-oriented view into their data. And then the last leg of what we do is helping remediate, take action, so you can fix these issues and prevent data loss.
Nice. 4 or 5 weeks ago, if I had heard you, say NLP, I would have rolled my eyes. Oh, another artificial intelligence, machine learning solution. But with the advent of ChatGPT, I think the entire world all of a sudden has woken up and realized, yeah, you can, give it information or use it to identify what's being talked about and make it understandable. So it sounds like a logical use case. When you started this, it was very visionary.
Absolutely. We were tackling, admittedly, a very hard technological problem. And whenever we talk to customers, it's almost like magic. It's like, okay, wow, you can actually do that. And so some of the things, for example, we pride ourselves on is we can go into a customer environment and pretty much discover a large chunk of their data without them. They can literally point us at their data stores and walk away. We have deployments today in the petabytes where we have helped them discover and understand where all their sensitive data is without them having to do any work. And literally, I mean any work. And in order for us to be effective doing that, we knew that being able to demonstrate this within a customer environment has to be very easy. So for us, it's literally 10 minutes to stand up a product. It's completely agentless, API-based connectivity back into repositories. It takes us 10 minutes to stand up a POV, and within a few days, customers can actually see this working in their own environment. And part of that was a deliberate choice to say, look, people are not going to believe what we're going to say. So we have to make it easy for them to see it working within their own environment so they can actually make a decision for themselves. But you're absolutely right. I think AI and NLP, and this is my second startup doing this. We did a lot of AI for anomaly detection back in the day. And when you're just doing anomaly detection, it's very, very hard because human behavior, if you do things like behavioral analytics, human behavior is fundamentally variable. So it's kind of a hard problem to solve. But in the world of contextual understanding of data, semantic meaning, which requires you to build up thematic context, it's a problem that is a hard problem to solve, but it's also a tractable problem in that we know that there is technologies today that are available that will allow you to do this at scale with extremely high accuracy.
Isn't the ability to find data and then classify it just a tiny, tiny sliver of the value that you're going to expose? If you give this to a customer, aren't they going to start asking, well, yeah, you can tell me where my data types are and PII, but now I want to know, I want to extract business intelligence from all of my data, and it's just another type of query.
Oh, that's absolutely right. In fact, even on the security world, discovery is a means to an end, right? I mean, if you just discover data, how good is that, right? Eventually, you have to help customers. And so, for example, we have a tech company that is using us to identify intellectual property that they want us to proactively identify where employees may be sharing it with their own personal email. And it's an insider risk use case. It's against corporate policy or another financial hedge fund that's using us to identify trading data that if it were to end up in the hands of people other than their traders, the broader company, external groups, and so on, that's an SEC violation. And so understanding discovery has to be a means to solving a broader problem, which is understanding risk, understanding scenarios of violations, and being able to remediate that. Also, data management, because one of the things that customers are struggling with is just data sprawl. I mean, you have primary storage often getting consumed with hundreds of thousands of redundant copies of data that don't need to be there. I mean, it's a cost issue, but also more importantly, it's a legal issue. I mean, why do you need all of this data that can broadly be accessed by your employees when potentially you could do with fewer versions of redundant copies? And so it's also starting to blend in with the world of data management, where effective data security is a means to also being able to do effective data management.
Absolutely. So we've talked about data discovery, data classification. Let's talk about protection. I haven't talked to very many CISOs or the people responsible for data who are comfortable with automatically, deleting a database that nobody uses or shouldn't be there, or automatically taking any steps. What do you do on the protection side?
Yeah, so great question. I'll answer that on a couple of levels, right? I think one of the challenges in the past has been because your understanding of risk has been fairly error prone. Any sort of a remediation action that you take, fixing permissions or deleting data or moving data to the right location was fraught with the challenge of dealing with support cases and so on. And so that's why a lot of enterprises, often are wondering, okay, what do I do for, what do you do for remediation? It's just central remediation. We offer customers a full gamut. We do allow them to do centralized remediation, where they can take action from our console for data sets that they absolutely want to make sure there's centralized control. Like if you have, for example, we have a customer for whom intellectual property is extremely important. They have export control data. They need to make sure that it doesn't end up in the wrong hands. In those cases, I mean, they for select classes of data, they absolutely are okay doing centralized remediation. But then they also want to make sure that there is a broader spectrum of data for which they want you to plug back into their existing remediation workflows through their SIMs or platforms, co-opting the end users as well into being able to do that. And we offer a spectrum of remediations, everything from integrations with like Phantom or Demisto, or being able to work back into their notification workflows, and being able to plug the end users back into their remediation workflows as well. And solutions in this space cannot be effective unless you actually offer the spectrum of workflows necessary to support a modern enterprise.
Can you share what the typical reaction is at a customer after they've deployed? I imagine there's a period of rampant discovery of things that shouldn't be where they are and have to be curtailed in some way. Just give us a feel for that over time.
Yeah, so there's a bit of there's a huge aha moment when we go in enterprises, because whenever the people have mostly deployed solutions for the last 10, 15 years, often fairly disillusioned with what they have gotten out of these products. Because what they've often, in fact, one CISO told me he was spending $5 on people to operationalize his data security solutions for every dollar in solution investment. So, and even then, years later, they get pretty underwhelming results. So when we actually come in, when we plug in fact, I'll give you an example. We had an oil and gas company where they had existing approaches, failed, a couple of times over, and we were able to come in, literally deploy over a weekend. And within a few days, we were able to give them a full inventory of all of their data, even show them where there was risk against that data, also derived autonomously. This is just a huge aha moment, right? It's like, oh my God, like I did not know this was possible. But most importantly, I did not know this was possible with less than half a full-time resource dedicated to a project like this, and doing what they'd like to do best, which is interpreting risk findings and taking action. Versus traditionally what mostly solutions in the space have burdened them with, which is spending years of effort, man hours to operationalize these products. So it's just a huge sense of relief when people deploy a product and see what we can do for them.
Karthik, give me a feel for how to answer to the, I don't know, objections or people who say, hey, cloud security posture management does 90% of this, doesn't classify data. That's what you need. Is CSPM and DSPM bound to come together? Do you need both separately? How should we think about that?
Yeah, so two-pronged answer, right? I mean, I think if you look at the on-premises world of how this was, I mean, you still have a network infrastructure stack. You've got a data security stack, could be governance, could be DLP. You've got a SIM store stack, and could they all come together? I mean, has it really happened on premises? It really hasn't, right? And so there are different challenges. I mean, if you look at data, we obsess about data. For us, it's really a data-centric view of the world. And I'll give you the simple example for why solutions like ours have become imperative. If you look at the traditional way security was done, it was a very what I'll call folder-centric approach to securing your data. You would have a vault, you would have a legal folder, you put your legal data there, you would make sure that only legal people had access to this data. And when the auditors came calling, if it's compliance as a driver, you would satisfy your compliance requirements. Once you get to the cloud, as data can get shared everywhere, I mean, you can literally right-click on a file and link shared with somebody halfway around the world, and now somebody who should not have access to that data has access to it. And when collaboration is the driver for how you're doing things, which is pretty much how it happens within the cloud environments, now the problem has become infinitely more challenging, and you have to fundamentally rethink how you think about security. For us, simplest example is, we start with content. Like, we'll be able to tell you, for example, here are the 1,000 trading documents that you have sitting across 15 different locations, and here are all the people who have access to it with inconsistent privileges, where we abstract out the notion of folders and location to give customers a unified data out view into where their data may be at risk. That's very different from how, for example, the cloud security posture management folks think. I mean, they think about open folders and open buckets. But what if you have an open bucket with no data at risk, right? I mean, you have to start. For us, everything for us starts with data, and then the view into risk starts with being able to subsume things like metadata to give customers a view into where their data may be at risk. So it's a very different mindset. It's a very different solution to the problem. I mean, it's all software at the end of the day. Anybody can do anything, but where you start will often sort of dictate how these categories evolve. And we believe that our approach is fairly foundationally different from what the CSPM vendors are doing, or what even the newly emerging ASPM vendors are doing. So
Beautiful. I want to thank you so much, Karthik, and I'm sure all of our viewers will click on over to see the Concentric AI demo next.
Thank you, Richard. Very nice talking to you. Thanks for having me.
You bet.